How's it going, guys? I want to thank you guys for joining me on a new episode of Champion of Your Soul. I'm your host, Eric Ashton Spooner, and today we're going to be discussing a very intense topic today. It's a very, very personal subject to me, and today's episode is entitled Vulnerability in Manhood. This is a very personal topic to me because I know that it affects millions of men all over the world. And this subject doesn't have a race, a color, an ethnicity, a socioeconomic background attached to it. Certainly this applies to all men. And so I'm going to speak to this universally. Because it affects so many men around the world, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. But in general, I'm going to speak to some specific things, and I really want to take a deep dive look into the inner corridors of a man's soul and what really goes on inside of us. And as a black man, I'm going to look at this from one angle, but even as I look at this from that one angle, I know that it applies to all men in these areas. So I want to look at a few articles that have come out into the news recently. I'm just going to take a couple of looks at a few articles that are talking about some specific subjects that really are alarming to me. But I want to look at this subject. I looked this word up, manhood. And if you really actually Google this term manhood, this is what the dictionary says. If you Google the term manhood, it says it's the state or period of being a man rather than a child. It says it's boys in the process of growing into manhood. Another alternative says men, especially those of a country, regarded collectively qualities traditionally associated with men, such as courage, strength, and sexual potency. So what I just read is what you would Google when you looked up the term manhood. And when I look at those terms that I just read just now, I'm puzzled because I really don't know really what they're saying. I really don't know really what they're saying. And I think that I've asked different men from different races and different backgrounds and different cultures, what do they think manhood is? And so many men did not have a clear answer. They really didn't have a clear answer as to what the definition of manhood really is. So as we look at this topic today, the vulnerability in manhood, this is a very intense topic because so many men from as early as the age of 4 and 5 years old, all the way into their adulthood, are told that men cannot be vulnerable. We're taught from childhood that men are not allowed to express their feelings, their thoughts. They can't use their voice to speak how they really feel about things. And so I want to take a deeper dive look into some of this. And there's a particular article that was released by The Observer. And this is a pretty widely publicized article. And the article is titled, No Way Out, Black Male Suicides Rising Faster Than Any Other Racial Group. And so when I read an article like this, I'm looking at the statistic that they're talking about, and I know that it's real. I know that it's true. But I also know that this is not just a statistic that's attached to black males. This is something that's an epidemic with white males, Latinos, every type of Spanish speaking, even Asian males struggle and grapple with things in this area of a man's emotions and stresses and things that men deal with. So I'm just going to read a snippet of this article, and I want to take a deep dive look into what is it that we're missing when it comes down to men and their emotions, men and their soul, men and how they process life. And so a little snippet from this widely publicized article, it says, researchers are sounding the alarm about the number of young black men who are dying by suicide. From the 26-year-old son of award-winning actress and director Regina King to the young mayor of Newark, New Jersey's, some in the African American community are speaking out to raise more awareness about suicide and mental health, especially when it comes to Black men. Unfortunately, Black men often suffer in silence. This is said by therapist Nettie Jones, MSLPC. She said, they don't seek the help that sometimes women will reach out to get. We'll call our girlfriends, let them know the things are not okay. But unfortunately, Black men tend not to do that. They hold things in, they self-medicate, they are workaholics. The kind of do stuff that's not very healthy. They kind of do stuff that's not very healthy. So when I look at that, and this article goes on to talk about while rates of suicide and anxiety have risen sharply during the pandemic, a recent study from the journal JMA finds that suicide attempts were rising at an alarming rate long before COVID-19. The study found that Black males had the highest increase in suicide attempts compared to any other race group. For example, increasing nearly 80% increase. And so they go on to talk about, the tragic news that we found out about actress Regina King's son, that we were all so horribly heard about and torn about. But this article goes on to just mention just a quick snippet of that. It says, when Cheryl Jackson read the news of Ian Alexander Jr.'s death, her heart sank, not just because she was a big fan of Regina King, but because she was a mother. Now, this article goes on, and of course you can look this article up yourself and read more about this. This is just one of many articles that are highlighting some of the major issues going on with males in general, but this is in particular highlighting Black males. And so I'm looking at this information and I'm puzzled because it's hitting home for me because it's personal to me. Number one, because I can relate to it. And also number two, it affects men that look like me. And it's not just affecting men that look like me, but it's affecting men in a epidemic way across all ethnic groups and races. So when I look at the suicide rate of men going up at this extraordinary increased rate, and we're looking at black males in particular, and it's not just Black males in particular, really, it's men of all races that are being incarcerated, imprisoned, the divorce rates, the relationship breakdowns, the crime, all of these breakdowns in our community, and it's stemming back to the men. And so when I look at all of this, I'm saying, okay, what are we missing? There's a piece of something that we're missing as a society. And I looked at that article and I read it and I said, okay, even amongst Black males, suicides have risen faster than any other racial group. And these are recent headlines. Now, according to the CDC, I want to look at a quick statistic that comes from the Center for Disease Control Prevention. And they say, this is a very recent article, that suicide is the 12th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2020 alone, 45,979 people died of suicide. But this is the big thing right here. In 2020 alone, there were over 1.2 million suicide attempts. And so I'm looking at that statistic and it's super puzzling because I'm saying these are the ones that are recorded. These are the ones that they have actually reported and recorded. So imagine if they have 1.2 million attempted suicides in 2020 alone, how many more have happened and they were not reported? So I'm looking at the suicide attempts. I'm looking at all of these alarming statistic rates that are coming out in the articles and in the news. And it came to me that I had a talk with a personal friend of mine who actually trains me in the gym. And we had a personal conversation about something that he was experiencing. And I realized that so many men don't have anywhere to go to talk. They don't have anyone to talk to. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things to really sit with and really realize that so many men are out there suffering in an alarming rate. And I believe it takes a man to really know the pain of another man and the inner corridors of the soul of a man, because it's very emotional. A lot of people may think that men don't have emotions, that men, we're taught to be tough and take it up and, be tough and never show emotions and never, let your guard down. But the things that are happening with so many men is so emotional and it's so spiritual, and it's not being addressed and it's not being talked about in a way where we can really hit the mark and say, okay, we got our hands on the real culprit here. And so that's the reason why I wanted to really step into the deep waters of this type of episode, because there's millions of men out there, millions of all races, all ethnicities, all backgrounds. And it's dressed up in suits and fancy cars and high titles and positions and men of great power and influence and wealth. You can dress those things up, but internally you can't heal it with external things. You can't heal the wounds of your heart and of your soul with a Rolls Royce or a Porsche or a BMW, or a new house, or you cannot take materialistic things and heal those areas. So I wanted to take a really closer look into this, and I don't want to miss the mark on this subject, because I really believe that so many men out there could be reached, and this particular episode can open up the conversation for an even greater and even bigger conversation that can happen later. So I want to ask the question. I said, okay, I want to take a deeper look into this, but what is the unspoken pain that men carry? What is the unspoken pain that men carry? And in my heart of hearts, and in my soul, I know that the pain is so deep with so many men, and it's so entrenched, and it's so buried, and it's so lying dormant. It's so buried into the crevices of their souls, because there's no outlet for them to receive support and receive help. There's no outlet for them to have that close friend that they can say, okay, I can trust this person with my life. I can trust this person with my story. I can trust this person with my pain. And so many men don't have that. And if they do have friends, they have friends who they feel may judge them if they let their guards down, or they have people in their lives who love them, who cannot allow them, who won't even let them let their guards down. Because they feel like, oh my God, if I let my guard down with these people that I love, they're just gonna crumble. They're gonna die, if they see me in this weakened state. And it's so far from the truth, so far from the truth. And so I'm opening up this episode with such a long commentary on that, because this thing is so layered, and there's so many men out there that are in pain. And I think about how many men are in prison. How many men have been divorced? How many people out there who have broken relationships? How many men out there have so many secrets and things they cannot tell anyone about? Because we have been trained and programmed by society, by family, by religion, by life, that it is impossible for us to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is somehow a weakness, and vulnerability is not accepted. It's not praised. It's not supported in men. So that's the disservice. Number one, I would say that's the huge disservice that we do to men around the world when we don't give them the opportunity to say, okay, it's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to speak your truth. It's okay for you to share your true heart. It's okay for you to open up. It's okay for you to talk about the past. It's okay for you to open that thing up again. It's okay. And because we don't have the permission, the general mass permission by society, we have sunk into new realms of despair and anger and depression and addiction. And it's not working for us. It's not working for so many people out there. It's not working. And I truly believe that if the men are healed and if the men find their place of healing and peace and restoration in their own souls, then guess what? Then the family is healed, and then the relationships are healed, and our communities are better, and our schools are better. Life is better because men always come first. We always carry the load. So I just want to pose just a few questions and talk about this subject even more in depthly. And I just want to let everyone know that this is not the first and last time I'm going to discuss this topic, because I want to see people leave some comments in the comment section. I want to see people send me some messages. I want the people out there, and especially I want the men out there who don't have anyone to talk to, don't have an outlet, don't have that safe place. I'm opening myself up. I'm giving you an opportunity to send me your questions, send me your stories, send me your messages, because this conversation is not going to stop after today's episode, because this is a huge, huge wound that has to be looked at, has to be healed. And I believe we have to attack it head on. So I've asked the question, I said, what is the unspoken pain that men carry? We know that there's layers and layers upon pain and wounds that many men walk around with on a daily basis. And they don't tell their wives, their girlfriends, their significant other. They don't talk to their family about it. They don't go to therapy. They don't have support systems. Most men, I believe, are in performance mode. We are trained. I think the article mentioned most men are workaholics. We self-medicate. And so instead of a man saying, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to make vulnerability my first go-to, and open up about some things to the right person. Rather than doing that, I think most men self-medicate in some way, whether that be sex, whether that be food, whether that be drugs, or it can also be work. And I think that being a workaholic is just another way to self-medicate or to avoid the tough areas that most of us men are so afraid to look at. And if we even feel like we're going to have to look at it, we shut down and we avoid and we become distant and we push it away and we avoid it. And so we do become workaholics, and we run away from the very notion of having to open up and really tunnel down and look at our own souls. And so I'm really interested in healing the soul of people through these conversations and through these dialogues that we're going to have. And so I want to ask a lot of men. I said, why are men most likely to commit suicide over their female counterparts? Why, even in the statistics that we just read, 80% of men, even in other race groups, this is white males in particular, who are considered white or Spanish speaking, even in those race groups, 80% of suicides are males. 80%. That's 8 in 10. And so when you look at that very high number, and then of course I mentioned earlier, Black male suicides have risen at an astronomical level since the pandemic. And it was happening even before the pandemic as well. So we're looking at this thing and we have to ask that question. Why are men more likely to commit suicide? Now, it didn't say men are likely to take drugs, use food, run the car off the road. It didn't say that. It said men are more likely to commit suicide. And so why is it that suicide is the go-to? Why would ending your own life be the answer or the conclusion that many men are coming to? Why? That is such a drastic, extreme decision to make. And I truly believe that, these are things that are happening years before they ever show up. If you look at a person's life, if a person has committed suicide, this issue and this wound and this pain was being carried by that person for years before it even showed up naturally, before the occurrence ever happened. And so how many men have a safe place to go to actually open up? How many men actually have one? I would just ask one person. How many men actually have one person in their lives that they know, okay, this is my ride or die. This is my go-to person. This is the other man in my life or the other friend in my life that I can tell anything to and know that it's safe, and know that this person will not abuse my trust or betray me or repeat my personal information to someone else. Who is that one person that you have in your life that you can just tell anything to and not be judged, not be persecuted, without any, repercussions of any sort? Who is that one person that you have? And I think that every man needs at least one friend like that, whether it's a brother, a friend, a best friend, whatever that person is. I think that every man needs that one person in their lives that they can just go straight into that place with. If a man can't sit with his best friend, and this is somebody he considers his best friend, if a man cannot sit with that other man and cry tears, let tears fall from his face without being judged, that's a problem. That's a major problem. Because once a man is judged for being vulnerable, he will shut down for another 5 years. And he will never open back up to that person ever again. And so we're seeing this in marriages and relationships with women, with other counterparts, men have walls upon walls and layers upon layers of guard up that has to be broken down. And what I found is, and I'll talk about some personal experiences that I've had. I have worked in the inner city, a few inner cities, but I've worked in the inner city back home, and for years, I've have over 12 years experience working in the inner city with young black males and young Latino males, and I've watched these young men be at the ages of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, really be in that prison pipeline, what they would call that pipeline to prison system. And I've watched them be in everything from a fatherless home, absent parents, abusive homes, being suspended, expelled from school. All of these things are happening at that age, in that transitional age group. And so I mentioned that to say the pain and the wound of most men is happening. It started very early in their lives. And of course, those layers are being built and those walls are being built at those early ages. And because they're not dealt with, they just increase and grow and grow and grow, and just exacerbate to the point of what you see a man do at the age of 30 or 25 or 40 or 50, or some men get to the middle of their lives and commit suicide in their 40s and 50s. And that's a statistic that's well documented, that most men get to that age group and in their lives. And I know that too well as well, because I know people who have been in my life, and close friends of mine who have made decisions in their lives who, I cannot, say what it is exactly that led them to that point. But I do know that men get to that particular age group and experience great shaking and great shifting. So as a person who's worked in the inner city and in youth programs and mentoring programs and mental health programs for many years, and watched young men struggle and have pain and get on drugs and alcohol at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and carry the pain of not having their father in the home, and carry the pain of not having a male to talk to, and then still have the pressure of, I have to finish high school, I have to go to college, I have to get a job, all the societal pressures and expectations that are required and expected. But because of that male absence in that young man's life, there are things that are being developed in his mind and in his heart and in his soul that school doesn't teach you how to get through. There's normally no one in their lives that's there to guide them, prepare them, push them, motivate them, love them, and be there to hold them and to embrace them and let them know that they can do it. And so I've worked in these programs and around so many young people for years, watching so many things happen, every dysfunction you can think of. And I've watched a lot of young people give up on themselves at a very young age. They give up on life at 16, 15, 17, 18, at a very young age, to say, you know what, there's no reason for me to live. And so I can say so much about this subject because it's so layered and it's so deep. But the crime that we see in our society, it started somewhere. That divorce, it started somewhere. The sex addiction, the food addiction, all of these, it started somewhere. And so when I look at the vulnerability in manhood, for the most part, there is no vulnerability in manhood that has been accepted. However, I would say that all men are very vulnerable in some way. And the greater the guard up and the greater the wall up and the greater that they cannot speak and use their voice, the more that they are unable to articulate their own emotions and their own thoughts and how they really feel, is the degree of pain that they are carrying. And so, this is such a layered topic for me to go into and to look into. I have a friend of mine who I just buried last year, actually last spring. It's been about a year now. And this was a very close friend of mine. And we shared a lot of things together, spiritually and in brotherhood and friendship. And he was my go-to person, that I can tell basically anything to. And so this went on for years. We it was a godly, spiritual kinship, friendship, brotherhood that he could sit there and cry with me in the car and tell me everything that was going on with him. And I could sit there and not judge him for it and listen to everything. And I could do the same thing back to him. And so every man needs one of those people in their lives. Unfortunately for me personally, that person hasn't been replaced in my life. So I know the value and the power of powerful divine relationships that come into your life for a divine purpose. And I know the power of who he was in my life. But to see his life end in the way that it did, for me personally, that was very heartbreaking for me, because, that was a close friend of mine. We shared a lot. That was my person that I knew I could just, I could lay it all out. I can be the real Eric. I can say whatever I need to say. And that kinship and brotherhood was there. I believe that every man needs that. And you have to be careful who you call a friend. A friend is somebody who you can strip yourself down completely naked, and I'm speaking theoretically in that term. But what I'm saying is you should be able to strip yourself down emotionally, spiritually, mentally, without any judgment, and be human. Just be human, and not have the world's expectations or people's expectations or families' expectations on you at all times, trying to please everyone. And so I know what it's like to lose someone to what you would call maybe a suicide, or lose someone unexpectedly in that way. But it is, as we saw in the statistics, it's an epidemic. It's not a pandemic anymore, hopefully, but it's definitely an epidemic. And it's not just with men of color, but it's across the board. And so I wanted to open up this subject because I don't want us to miss it this time. I don't want us to just glaze over this and just say, okay, yeah, that's true. That's a true statistic. And, it is what it is. No, I truly believe that through this conversation, we can not just save someone, but we can open up a new culture and a new way of being for men everywhere. And everyone can, little by little, start to allow men in their lives to open up and find the correct healing that they really need. So I've gone through many questions. I've had men send me questions from all over the country. I've had men submit me all types of questions and concerns, and they've sent me these things by email. And I was happy to receive them because it's really hard for men to open up in general. Even when I put out the question to a lot of men that I know personally, there were some men, they really, I asked them the simple question, tell me the scariest thing what's the scariest question that you have in terms of masculinity and men and vulnerability, and several people that I know, they really couldn't answer. They, a man in general, he has to go inside of himself, internally, and search and think and evaluate and calculate, how does he want to, what question does he want to ask? And can he ask this particular question? And how is it going to be viewed if this particular question is asked? And is it going to be judged? And, so I told him, I said, listen, it's no judgment zone. It's any question you can ask me, anything. There's completely no judgment zone with this subject. So I had a lot of men send me their questions and their concerns. And I will say this is my synopsis based on what I was reading. There's a lot of confusion out there, concerning this subject of manhood and masculinity. A lot of people don't know what manhood really is. And a lot of people really don't know what masculinity really is in 2022, in this new 21st century era of, seeing women be so elevated. And for me personally, my personal view on that is my masculinity and manhood has nothing to do with what a woman has. Her elevation, her skills, her power, her title, her position. That has nothing to do with me. My manhood and masculinity is about me. It's not about her. It's not about what she has and what power she has. And if we are in a relationship, her power and her influence and her title or her money has nothing to do with my masculinity, my manhood. So, that's my personal take on that. Now, I received a lot of questions and concerns and viewpoints on, masculinity, manhood. And most men are afraid to open up. Even when I pose the question and I put it out there, most men are afraid to open up. They and this is why I took the time to give that long commentary earlier, because it is such a layered area for us to look at. And number one, you gotta care. You gotta care about men. You gotta care about what they're feeling and what they're going through. Number one. And if you don't care, this is not a place for you, because going into the corridors of a man's soul, is not going to be a pretty sight at all times, and it's not going to be pleasing to the ear at all times, and also it's not for a quick answer. You don't always get what you want right when you want it. And so I'm looking at all of these questions that came to me and all of these concerns from different men around the country. And I'm also going to open this up I'm going to open it up for men outside of the United States. I want to hear from some people in the UK and in South Africa and Nigeria and some of the other countries. I'm going to send some stuff out for them, and I want them to answer some of these questions as well, so we can get them in on this conversation as well. And like I said before, I want people to put comments in the comment section. Send me direct messages if you need to. I'm open to receive whatever questions or whatever concerns that you have concerning this subject. And it's not just for men. I do want to hear from women as well, just so they can get clarity on this area if they have questions as well. So I just want to make that clear. So I really want to just lay the ground during this episode for what is to come. I really do believe that this subject of vulnerability, of men in their brokenness and men's wounds, their pains, we're really going to just jump into some things with this. And I really do believe when we really start to give men the time that they need for us to really touch these areas and really speak to them and open up the space, the safe place for them to have for this, we can stop a lot of premature deaths. We can stop some heart attacks. We can stop some drug addictions. We can stop some broken relationships and broken hearts. We can stop those things when that soul gets what it really, really needs. And we can get down to the root causes of some of these areas that are plaguing our community. And so there's so much that we're going to be looking at. And I don't want men to be afraid to go into some of these subject matters, because I'm going to be doing another episode on this, but I'll open it up as a question and answer episode. So that means men from all over. I'm actually going to go down the list and do a Q&A and allow you guys to submit your questions, and I'll be going through them on the air and literally answering as many as I can in an episode at a time. So this is what my goal is in this subject. Obviously, I want men to be healed. Obviously, I want the souls of men to find peace and healing in their lives and their relationships personally for themselves. But I want people to understand that for me personally, I found my greatest healing in my own surrender. My own surrender to God and my own surrender to myself was the perfect conclusion, I would say, or the perfect answer for some of the areas that I was in pain for, some of the things that I was dealing with, that I was struggling with. And so that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to find their healing for themselves and find a safe place for these conversations to happen. But at the end of the day, I want us to find surrender. That's the word that I would say if I were to sum up the spiritual battle that we're going through, the mental battle that we're experiencing through all of these things, the emotional battle, I would say surrender. Because to me, surrender is that is the true spiritual act that we all have to do. I think that us surrendering ourselves and saying, okay, I'm going to open myself up for this conversation. I am willing to speak my truth. I'm willing to use my voice. That is a form of surrender to God and to yourself. And when you give yourself the permission to surrender, I know that's when things change, and I know that that's when breakthroughs happen. And so as I close this episode, and of course, you guys know we're not done. We're just closing this episode, but I just want to give you this prayer of affirmation. And this is the prayer. I am not my past. My past was only the journey to get me to this state of maturity. I won't allow my brokenness, pain, wounds, or regrets to hold me back from my true voice being heard. I won't retreat or hide in loneliness and pain. I will take my place as the man God called me to be. I will give every gift, talent, and tool gifted to me by God to be used. I'm more than capable of rising above the storm, the circumstance, the hindrance that comes to hold me back from my true identity. I give myself permission to live the life my soul deserves. I am free. Daily, I surrender my strength and take on God's strength. I simply surrender. It is so. Amen. Thank you guys for watching Champion of Your Soul with us today. If you want to do me a favor, just click the subscribe button and notification bell, and I'll see you guys next time.